Let's pick up on the markets now. The JSE facing mixed trading session this morning with investors still digesting a surprise interest rate cut by China and weak economic data from that country. Rella Suskin is head of research at Benguela Global Fund Managers, and she joins us now for the latest markets update. Rella, good morning to you. Let's start with the rand, which is weaker in early trade as the US dollar urged higher. Tricky start to the week. Is this the kind of trade we can anticipate this week?
Good morning. I think at least the first half of the week will be a bit volatile. I think the big news this week coming out of the US is the Fed minutes will be released on Wednesday. So investors will be looking for some direction there as whether we think that interest rate hikes in the US have peaked and whether the Fed believes that inflation has peaked. And so until then, we might see a bit of risk-off behavior in the rand on the back foot.
Yeah. Let's talk about Absa, which is South Africa's fourth biggest bank by market value. It's released its interim results in a previous session, or should I say in a previous update, the bank flagging profit growth. Talk us through those numbers for us.
Yeah, sure. So, it was a good set of results overall. We did have guidance from Absa previously, as you mentioned, that they expected earnings to grow between 27 and 32%. Indeed, their earnings grew very much at the midpoint of that guidance, up about 30%. I think what is important is the drivers behind that earnings growth. So there was good top-line growth both from net interest income as well as non-interest revenue. Net interest income up 12%. Benefiting from the increasing interest rates, but also non-interest revenue up 18%, which has been quite impressive, driven by a turnaround in their insurance business. We also saw operating costs grow at a slower pace than revenue, and so their cost-to-income ratio coming down. This is in line with what we see across the rest of the banks. But I think overall, certainly a good result. It results in a return on equity for Absa at just under 18%, which is ahead of their cost of equity, and so they certainly are creating value for shareholders.
Let's continue with company news. Thungela Resources also publishing its 2022 interim results and a cash dividend declaration. That's music to some people's ears. Help us make sense of their performance.
Yeah, so it was, an excellent result from Thungela, but very much expected. They've really benefited from much higher coal prices over this period. We know from the Russia-Ukraine war, we're seeing a limit of gas supply to Europe, and so demand for coal in Europe has certainly increased prior to what was expected. We're also seeing a lack of supply from other major coal producers, which has sort of supported the higher coal prices. So this has supported revenue growth of 161% for Thungela. Their costs were only up 17%, and so that leveraging effect has resulted in a profit growth of more than 4,000% for the group. And as you said, it's resulted in a really nice dividend. They're sitting on cash balance of 14.8 billion rand. So they'll be paying out about 8 billion of that to shareholders.
Yeah, let's conclude the conversation with Spur Corporation, which has posted a sales update or trading statement. Anything surprising?
I wouldn't say anything surprising. It's a continued recovery story. Following the COVID lockdowns, Spur was obviously one of those companies that was heavily impacted by lockdown restrictions. So their sales are up a strong 28%, which is slightly ahead of 2019 numbers. So if we're comparing it to pre-COVID levels, they now are beating those numbers. That was really driven by their specialty brands, which saw 60% growth in sales in the second half of the year. And then their earnings grew between 28% and 32%, so a strong recovery there. Their earnings are still slightly behind pre-COVID levels, though, as we are seeing an increase in costs with high inflation coming through.
Rella Suskin, thank you very much for that markets update. She is head of research at Benguela Global Fund Managers.